Okay, let's go. Thank you for finding this ChargEv Pocket Talk here at iGEM 2020, being held virtually under unprecedented circumstances. And we're going to call this talk ChargEv Then, Now, and Where We Want to Go, right? So, if you're here, I assume you have some sort of interest in electric vehicles, some sort of interest in EV charging. But even if you don't, even if you're not from the industry, even if you're not an electric car driver, even if you have no interest in buying an electric car, maybe this will be of some use to you. Um, with that in mind, let's start with the beginning, perhaps. So, what is Charge EV? Charge EV is an electric vehicle charging network. And what do I mean by that? So, imagine you buy an electric car or a plug-in hybrid, which you can charge externally, and you get a charging device. We call it a charging station. We can call it a charging point. You may even call it an electric vehicle supply equipment. Semantics, really. So you get that and you may install it at your home and you charge it home, and that'll be the end of that. But you want to charge outside of your house. So you may come across a shopping mall, perhaps, who have set up their own charging stations. You can charge it there, and that'd be the end of that. Perhaps you would also stumble upon a hotel which have set up their own charging station, so you can charge it there, and that's the end of that, right? But what if we could have the charging station at the mall and at the hotel be connected uh, via the internet, via the cloud, to a central management system where the operator, in this case ChargeEv, could do, let's say, remote maintenance. We could look at the consumption of the charging station. So this is from the point of view of electricity consumed. How many times people have charged there on a daily, monthly, yearly basis? How many hours do people spend plugged in? So ChargeEv has a vested interest in collecting that data in order for us to make an informed decision for our expansion, perhaps towards the cause, and the cause being the proliferation of electric vehicles in the Malaysian market. Because really, there was an idea back in I don't know, 2013, 2014, where 2015, where we started, which is to kickstart the electric vehicle infrastructure in Malaysia. To see if we could inspire something more, to see if we could have uh, an uptake in the number of electric vehicles being sold and bought in Malaysia. Because as a lot of people will tell you, if you want to sell electric cars, you need to have at least some sort of charging infrastructure in place to give buyers that assurance that they can charge their cars. Because whenever we do events like this, we would sometimes have an electric car on display, and people come up to us, and there are typical questions that they ask when they say, "Oh, firstly, oh, is it really fully electric?" I say, "Yes." Why not? They also ask, "How much does it cost? How far can it go? Where can I charge? And how long does it take to charge?" So all of these questions arise because charging, EVs and EVs themselves are still a somewhat foreign concept to the vast majority of the Malaysian population in recent years, which is slowly changing, of course. But that goes for not only the public, but also some of those manufacturers who want to sell cars who have electrified offerings. So by and large, I think there needs to be more done by certain parties in order to promote the idea of electric vehicles in Malaysia. You know, that being said, we are looking at this from a charging point or charging station operator perspective, or you could also see us as an electric mobility service provider, allowing drivers of electric vehicles to find and use charging stations whenever they go about. So, having started in 2014 15 with the earliest charge stations, where are we now? Right, I hope you can see what's on screen, which is just a snapshot of where ChargEv is now as things stand. Well, not too long ago in August of 2020. So since 2015, right, when we started installing charge points, we had over 320 charging stations or charging points installed at over 20 public locations nationwide. So from the south all the way to the north, and some of the east coast highways, but the majority of those are on the west coast, really because the vast majority of EV owners and PHEV owners, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, are residing on the western coasts, right? So that's where the sales are, and that's reflected in the distribution of our registered users, which I'll get more into later on. But let's perhaps look at the impact of the network. So since when we started, we've had over 150,000 charging sessions successfully delivered, derived from 848 megawatt hours of electricity, which via some assumptions we've said is to be over 5.6 million kilometers of electric range from your EVs, from your plug-in hybrids. So the electricity that we've delivered has helped us in helping you travel on pure electric. And most importantly, we're going to look at the net carbon emissions reduction, which is about 491 tons of CO2 of carbon emissions avoided, right? And this is net, meaning we've already deducted the amount of carbon that's been generated by the electricity, offset with what you would have emitted if you were driving a standard petrol car. You know, this is sort of in response to those people who always say electric cars aren't really as green as you make it out to be because the electricity that you use to charge them is not green. And I'm inclined to agree with those people, aside from the fact that the electricity can still be decarbonized via solar, via wind, whatever it is. Whereas it's a much tougher to do that with petroleum-based products, right? So anyway, there are some good examples which I'll show later on, which reflect what we're trying to do from that angle. But moving on to look at the registered users, you see over 8,700 registered users are signed onto the charging network, because in order to use the charging stations on a network, you need to be a card owner. So if you sort of go to the website chargeev.my, you can get your charging cards. So each driver will be associated with a certain card, and this is really part of the data collection, right? We want to know the charging behavior of Malaysians when it comes to using public charging stations or otherwise. It really helps in our decision making to spot some trends there. So I did say public charging stations or otherwise. That's because we have also installed some private charging stations at some, let's say, corporate offices, some condominiums, if you will. So we do this because we want to look at, again, the behavior of people inside those places, right? How different is the behavior as compared to people charging outside? And we want to base that of actual real world data. In fact, we're working on a project now which addresses some of the issues that we have in deploying charging stations at those sorts of places. I mean, it was hard enough trying to deploy charging stations at public locations, but when it comes to privately run places where there's less of a selling factor towards inviting the public to come in, then you're gonna have a tougher road ahead, which we hope to change in the near future with these projects that we're doing. So going back to what we've done as a network is, I believe, to use everyone's favorite word again, unprecedented, as it's never been done before, and for any other private entities to do at this stage would be difficult in the current climate. Of course, none of this wouldn't be possible without the help of all of the location partners of all those 223 public and maybe some of the private ones as well. So if any of you are here, massive thank you to those people who helped to deploy the charging stations, right, all the way from Petronas, who we have 61 charging stations with, from TNB Energy Services or Tenaga Nasional Berhad Energy Services, who've helped us to deploy 73, 75 charging points in our most recent network expansion. And as well to Sarawak Energy Berhad, who's started the initiative to electrify parking spaces in East Malaysia, in Kuching, with 5 charging points available to the public there. And we're very keen to look at the data from East Malaysia after the 12-month mark has passed, since those installations are still very recent. There's sometime last year, yeah. Since we're doing appreciation shout outs, we also can't proceed without thanking our international counterparts from the Global Environment Facility and from the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, GEF, and UNIDO, whom we've worked with under the energy efficient and low carbon transport project, who've really we've worked with on embarking on some unique projects. One of those being our efforts in the island of Langkawi up north. So Langkawi is a fairly small island, not much of a population there. So it makes up for a cool little sandbox for us to try to see if we can, at a small scale, electrify the entire island. So we've set up 10 charging points there in cooperation with Jeff Unido, as well as the state governments and the local authorities. There will be an 11th one coming up there as well. as part of a wider Langkawi low carbon island program. So I'd say that watch this space. There's going to be a lot of positive news concerning that. Now, still on the theme of EV charging, the other cool thing that we've done with the United Nations and the same project, as well as our location partners plus expressways, who are the highway operators and concessionaires of the North-South Expressway, as well as with TNB Energy Services, we've helped to try to electrify these rest service areas, or R&Rs, as they're known, with 10 charging points at 5 different locations powered by solar. And they're not 100% powered by solar. You need a quite sizable installation at each site, but the ones that we've installed are 6 kilowatt peak, and they're not intended to pass as uh, fully decarbonizing EV charging there. No, it's just merely to demonstrate that it can be done. Even a partial reduction in the electricity consumption in relation to EV charging cumulatively provides a big impact in terms of reducing the carbon emissions of mobility, of course, as compared to petrol or diesel vehicles here. And the great thing about these stations, you can see a picture of it there, is they're made in such a way in that they're modular. So today it's 6 kilowatt peak, but tomorrow, if things are favorable with the location operator, with us, there's every opportunity for it to be expanded. So, 6, 12, 14, 24, 44, whatever it is, in order for us to fully make charging stations decarbonized. And if you add more solar panels, you can certainly add more charging points there. Um, these things are meant to be a long-term roadmap. And of course, these stations are still under the ChargeV network. So if you are a card holder, then come and use them free of charge. Now, I've talked about where ChargeEV's been. I've talked about the value of having a centrally managed charging system for the operator. Yes, no brainer. But what about for the drivers themselves? So having it connected via the cloud, all these charging stations can then be ported onto some sort of application for drivers to navigate to a charging station, to see the specifications, the power levels. They can also see whether something is available or occupied. Now, currently, they can do that via the companion New Motion mobile application. If you download it now, it might be different. It's gone through some recent updates, but the idea is the same. It provides benefits to drivers as well as the location partner. So you'll literally be putting your location on the map if you have a charging station as part of a wide network. And this will only be improved upon in the future based off the lessons learned. So what are those lessons learned? We like to look at shopping malls because we place a lot of charging stations within malls, and a lot of the charging sessions occur in malls. Um, if you know anything about Malaysians, you know the shopping malls are one of our favorite pastimes. There's air conditioning, there's food, there's toilets, and really, what more could you want? Now, the data indicates, and this still holds true today, that most people are generally well behaved. And what I mean by that is people generally plug in and plug out within a 3-hour period. And for the majority of the Malaysian market, which is still plug-in hybrids, that's all you need really, which translates to about 7 kilowatt hours of use electricity. I mean, now the electricity is probably going to change in the near future, considering that we're seeing more hybrid plug-in hybrids come with bigger battery sizes, more electricity to charge. But the charging times are generally going to be the same. People want to go to places where they can charge alongside what they want to do, not necessarily specifically go there to charge their car. That's mostly the case when you look at highways, right? But coming back here, one of the things you would have run into in popular places like malls is the issue with concern to charging etiquettes. On the subject of charging etiquette, there is a small but very passionate group of electric vehicle enthusiasts in Malaysia who would be very vocal about this issue of charging etiquette, which is really not overstaying your welcome, plugging out, and moving your vehicle once your car is fully charged. Oh, there may be people who do this intentionally, unintentionally. If it is intentionally, then what drives the people to do this? I am underqualified to say so. How does the charging operator look at solving this? Which is in itself a point of contention. Is it the charging point operator's responsibility to ensure people have good charging etiquette? Is it the responsibility of the location partner, the car park operator, or even the building owner to instill good charging etiquette? Or can we just hope that people will behave themselves? Mm, which is an even more hopeful stance to have on it. Well, there are several strategies that you can looking at in terms of either punishing people or offering people some sort of incentive to be well behaved. Uh, one of the ways and you could penalize them is by clamping. Overstay your welcome and you get clamped. Straightforward as that. You could also implement a valet system, mm, which is yet to be fully recognized and deployed by us. There could be some sort of incentives, which is tied to bookings as now. Incentives might be the best way to go about it because going too hard on penalties towards people who are maybe less well behaved, let's call it, might discourage them from coming back. If you beat someone with a big stick for charging for 4 hours rather than 3 hours, they might not even come back a second time, which to us might be a loss, right? But one of the things we're looking at is bookings. A lot of people say, "Oh, it'd be good if we could pre-book a charging station to ensure that you have a spot when you want to go there." And to that, we've started to work with this great company, Park Easy. Shout out to the guys at Park Easy who who've implemented a car park barrier booking system, and we've recently worked with them at My Town shopping mall, which is adjacent to the IKEA in Cheras. Now you still have to be a ChargEv holder to access these, but you can book a charging session ahead of time for a specific amount of time. And if you decide to intentionally overstay, you're welcome. There will be a surcharge applied uh, to it. You stay for more than uh, 3 hours, and it really stacks on how much money you have to pay. And that way, there is an incentive for you to pull out. This was a recent installation, so we are keen to receive as much data from the site as we can in the next few months. And that is just an example of the kind of things that ChargEv is looking at to do in the future. I've talked at length about what ChargEv is, what ChargEv has done, but what do we want to do? Where do we want to go? Are we looking at increasing the number of charging stations? Sure. Are we looking at increasing it in the number of hundreds, perhaps? Yeah, thousands. Maybe. There's loads of things that Trevor's looking at doing for the future of us as an e-mobility service provider, from increasing the number of charging stations to improving the downtime of charging stations. But first and foremost, it will be to improve the user experience. One of the things we're looking at is through a really upgrading of our central management system in order for us to achieve the goals that I've just mentioned, really. And all of that is really coming back to giving some assurance to people that they could have a place to charge once they buy an electric car. What are some of the closing statements that I want to say? For those of you who are considering the next car purchase, buy electric. For those of you who want to see more charging stations, if you are an owner, really, I would say ask for them. You know, if you're from a private building, ask for charging stations. If you're a frequent visitor of a certain mall, which doesn't have any charging there, ask for them for sure. At any hotel that you stay in, ask for them. If you want charging stations in your particular city, ask your local authority for them, and keep asking, and eventually it will lead somewhere. And that's about it in terms of what we have to say at this opportunity. There's loads of things going on behind the scenes, which we hope we are able to announce. But for the time being, I hope some of this will be useful to you. For those of you who don't know what ChargEv is, and then I'm fairly certain that you would do by now. So thanks for listening.